All right, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Co-Creating with AI. We are proud to present our guest, Rasmus Falander, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Rasmus as well, Rasmus Aller. So, what's your status today, Rasmus? And I'm referring to Rasmus Oliver. How are we going to do this with names? I'm
Yeah,
confused already.
that's actually going to be a little bit tough. So maybe we'll need to come up with,
So
nicknames
I'm
today.
I'm I'm going to refer to you as host Rasmus and guest Rasmus. Host Rasmus, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, nice day, and excited for this chat. Guest Rasmus, I guess I don't have to say that, right? But Rasmus is a close friend of mine, and probably one of the best product people, in Sweden. Someone I always bounce kind of product questions with, and then more and more over the past year, AI. We had a dinner just last week. You know, just chatting about the OpenAI Dev Day and what's happening and what comes next. So always like someone I really enjoy discussing with and who stays kind of on top practically of using AI and experimenting with it both at work and but also privately. So that doesn't say anything about what you actually do, Rasmus. So maybe you want to just give it a couple of lines about that.
Yeah. So nowadays I'm at Klarna. I've been at Klarna for 8 years doing product management, and before that, I guess the wrap up of the story is a crash and burn entrepreneur. I had a couple of rendezvous. And got to learn a lot. But I've been very happy settling down and learning at Klarna for the last 8 years. And obviously, since 30th of November 2022, the hype has reached all the tech companies around AI with ChatGPT. I had the privilege of doing some projects before that. If I'm completely honest, I was discouraging some of the AI hype before, which was small in comparison, but with that it's just a hype. And somewhere around the end of 2022, my perspective on this just dramatically changed. And I think why I've gotten so passionate about this is I have this product orientation, I usually say, which is I love removing forms, queues, and administration from people's lives. That's the product management approach. I love giving time back. And AI is the tools we have now with generative AI is perfect for that, right? We can, in so many ways, remove friction and give time back to people. So I've been, all over this, love it. And I spend all of my working time and also a lot of my free time playing around with this and obviously at Klarna being the main place, but even speaking to other companies outside trying to help and navigate. So yeah, super excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Cool.
Can I just start by asking how old are you, Rasmus? Guest Rasmus. I mean, you've this incredible experience, and you are, I would guess, from looking at your face, like 22 years old. So, but what's the real number?
If you saw the back side of my head and the gray hair, you would have a more accurate guess. No, but I'm 34.
34. Yeah,
Yeah, and I,
awesome.
as many tech entrepreneurs back in the days, I started in university with my first company. Actually, me and host Rasmus, we shared offices while we were building separate companies once upon a time here in Stockholm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, what's your learning edge right now? What are you currently like thriving and enjoying reading about the most and learning about the most?
Uh, Oh, honestly, it's been a little bit of AI scene entertainment over the last couple of days with all the drama going on. Not
Hmm.
to dive into that too much, but that's been very fun looking at how I am usually going about learning about things in general, and in particular with AI over the last 1.5 years. Is I'm very practically oriented, so I like to try to do stuff and build stuff. Rather than just sit and read and philosophize. So it's been both implementing it in a lot of processes in obviously Klarna where I work, and looking at other companies, helping them as they're trying to navigate how to implement it in their processes. And over the last year when I've been doing this, it's been occurring to me, or it's been more obvious to me, that I think that for most companies, implementing this technology is about three buckets. It's about implementing it with your people to increase productivity with your staff, the individual contributors. It's about implementing it in your processes to remove recurring, boring tasks where actually human, to a large degree, are not as capable and good at delivering qualities as these bots that you can build. And lastly, to build products that are enriched by AI capabilities to have a better external offering. So to your question on like, how am I reading, how am I learning? For me, it's really about trying to implement stuff. And over the last 2 weeks, the most exciting part has been since the OpenAI Dev Day. Obviously, everybody sees that they're leading the field in pushing the capabilities connected to generative AI. And it's been playing around with the GPTs, the new agents you can set up individually. And it's been seeing how you can implement the assistance API. Because honestly, they just removed so much of the need to build the infrastructure around it. And I think you can sit and read on Twitter or you can read the documentation, but the reality hits you in the best way when you're trying to implement it. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. Sorry for a long answer.
No, definitely. Thank you so much. And um, nice thing about the GPTs is that they exposed almost the same functionality through their assistance API, right? Has that been something you explored with so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I would say that they are just different version. One is the interface version of the same
Yeah,
capability, and one is the
yeah.
API version of the same capability. Yes, absolutely. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how you can leverage the Assistance API as you build out a product. My narrative that I'm operating with right now is that it's not this like one-stop shop. You have some backend service to a system that just pings your assistant that you've set up with OpenAI, and it does everything. You still need to work very narrowly and build out one capability at a time with the assistant. So you're actually going to string together a bunch of smaller assistants to execute a bigger workflow, so to say. But I think it removes a lot of the hardcore engineering work. More people can be capable to enable what you want to have out of a workflow.
And just to double click there, because I always love to talk about it kind of theoretically, but also take it practically. Can you sort of just describe something that you've actually been building or are trying to build, and how you're doing that?
Yeah, obviously. I will take some GPTs examples here, since there might be some things that are delicate in sharing when implementing the Assistance API. But for example, I have this email mise en place agent that I want to build, and basically it's I want to create an assistant that with the Zapier integration that they already offer has access to my private Gmail inbox, and I wanted to go in and basically clean and structure my emails. So when I get in there as the head chef of this kitchen, which is my email inbox, I only have to sort of put the things together and taste the soup so it's right. And what I mean with that is I've been sitting and chatting with the create assistant when you're doing the GPT, and basically concluding how I operate in my email inbox. And there's a couple of categories of emails. Just to take the main ones, it's the unsubscribe category, spam, trash, random things that I don't want to continue subscribing to. It's the information category, mainly newsletters that I want to have summarized in a standard format, 5 bullets. That's how I like it. If I want to double click on the information, then I go and read the regular newsletter. It's the calendar related emails. For example, this, when we're going to do this session, you send and say like, when should we set up the podcast session? Then I've connected it to a calendar tool that I also know you guys are using. So basically you can go in and pick a spot because it has integration to my calendar. And fourthly, it is a regular email dialogue, so to say. Somebody's emailing me something, I need to respond with some text answering their questions. And I've been sitting there and just giving the system instructions, which is basically what you write out with the GPT. And then I've been downloading a bunch of my historical emails and creating a PDF out of it and uploaded it as an embeddings to have context on how I like to write emails. And what my agent then does, it's every email that comes into my inbox, it reads it, it categorizes it one of the categories, takes the appropriate action. It never has the ability to send the response because I don't trust it yet. but I just go in there and execute what it has recommended to a large degree. So that's one example of something I've been.
And I think that's interesting. I think I might even have mentioned it like without mentioning you, kind of as an example a little bit, like when we're talking about proactiveness. I think last time, Martin, in last episode, and the interesting thing there is like you actually, when you set this up, when you're happy with it, you will never have to go to ChatGPT. You will be in your email and you will have a draft for all of them. Whether that, I guess that's how you do it, like whether that draft is a summary with 5 bullet points, or that draft is a response, or that draft is unsubscribe, or that draft is an email with a calendar link to your calendar, or whatever tool you use. And that's, I think, is really cool with this is, it's not limited to the chat interface. Like building a chat GPT, like, as like, this is my email summarizer or whatever, and then you paste in the email or something. But it actually does it, and you just like literally have in your email, instead of having emails, you have drafts. That you just go through. Each email has a draft, and I think that's like, it's really like a good example of what you can do with this. And I'm not going to like, a little bit of code, but you're not like a developer, right? So you could argue that any kind of dedicated person can probably build something like this relatively quickly with the no-code tools out there, such as Zapier and Make.com, and of course these OpenAI tools, which I think is quite cool.
100%. And to that exact reference, make.com, I've been building some automations with that. And I think what is beautiful is, even if you, so for some of the automations I've been building, I need to do some HTTP requests to execute them. And since I'm not an engineer, I run into these problems, right? I get stuck in building out the automation. Having ChatGPT on the side, working together with ChatGPT works beautifully. It will help me resolve the problems so that I can get the automations going. So it's this, it's always a meta perspective on, you can even use the agent to do the work that you want to do with the other agent.
Mm. And the generalized recipe of using a GPT that you train on what you want to achieve and how you do your normal work, and plug that into workflows in Zapier sounds incredibly powerful in general.
Very much so. I agree. You've probably seen this on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram, and there are all these automation agencies that are starting, which you don't really know how much legitimate experience is behind the agency starting up. But if we don't spend our time scrutinizing how legitimate and powerful those agencies are, I think they speak to the point that with LLM capabilities now that are supporting so many different medias, I mean, the image, text, video, audio, etc. With those capabilities connected to automation tools like Make and Zapier, you get a lot of what was previously known as like hardcore engineering work accessible to anyone. And we've been talking about no code for a while. I think that's more of like a packaging to say no code, but whether or not it's no code, it's accessible today, and you can make huge productivity gains.
Yeah. So, do you think that GPT-4 is intelligent?
I always try to get away from having these discussions on the, is this utopia? Is this gonna be the end of civilization? When do we get AGI? Whenever I'm out talking about this, I try to package my knowledge as a pragmatic approach to generative AI. But since I'm here, I guess I have to play your game and answer your question. So is GPT-4 intelligent? Intuitively, I would answer no. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's like, no, I actually think it has reasoning capability that, with better processes around it, is as capable as like many people at least at their worst days in the office. If they were, if they, like, you forced it into the same processes as we force people. Like, have you done your stuff yet? Martin? Like you agreed to doing this last meeting. Did you do it? Well, not yet. I'm gonna get to it. Thank you for reminding me. Like if you, if GPT-4 had that, it would be capable of doing a lot of work. However, some days I feel the opposite. Like this thing is so stupid, and I really need to just let it do the bare bones thing, and anything else is just going to be random outcomes. But so I'm oscillating, and I'm allowing myself to oscillate there.
But I think like it's just like, I don't know, conflating intelligence with kind of sentience or consciousness is like, I don't know, I feel like we were doing that a little bit there, but like I don't think you can I mean, you guys are, but like in my perspective, like of course, like it has intelligence in the sense that it can do a lot of things very well, like on the level or even above of a human in specific areas, you know. But you know, is it sentient? No, definitely not.
No, and that's a completely no, definitely not. There's no awareness going on. That's not something I like. You can definitely make it simulate awareness if you like prompt it the right way.
Which is pretty interesting because the original Turing test kind of like, can it fool you if it's a human, that it's a human? That's been passed like by far. Yeah, it can do that with voice and with text and anything, right? But anyhow, take it back to the ground. I think we were on like a pretty interesting angle there with like building applications and who can do it and how you can do it. And I know we had like an interesting like little chat like the other week, Rasmus, which like I still am like not fully like immersed in how you see it. So I would love to sort of double click there, which is like, how does, you know, this now with no code kind of, let's call it, no code tools, workflow tools, you know, make.com, Zapier, etc. And, you know, now these capabilities that are so easily available through assistants, and these assistants that can do actions through these or as part of these, no code workflows. Like you said it in the way last week, like it could change fundamentally how we build software. So I just would love to sort of hear your thoughts again on that, because I'm still like not like fully in there with you, even though I'm approaching it.
So, I mean, obviously, we're just 2 weeks out from that release. So we're in early days, and this is speculation. But how my intuition is reasoning about that. If we look at what happened in the spring and, after ChatGPT was released, 30th of November 2022, we saw a lot of infrastructure tooling coming to life from all the big companies, not to mention specific stuff, but you saw Amazon and Google and everybody trying to put out infrastructure to make it easier to do embeddings, fine-tunings, vector databases, tools. Some of these were already existing, but they just blew up in the potency and the VC funding and so on. What that meant for people building workflows empowered by LLMs, it meant that you had to go and use those infrastructures, either to build out the Python code in a better way with like LangChain, or use vector databases with Pinecone, etc. What we're seeing since then is that all that infrastructure to enable, for example, giving richer context to an LLM when it's going to execute a specific task, that is now something you can easily upload directly as you're creating an assistant. You don't need to have third-party systems and string things together. I can actually go in there, upload the PDFs with the context, several PDFs towards the assistant, if it's a customer service process or whatever it is, and enrich that. And I don't need to learn and set up all these extra third-party systems. So it vastly decreased the complexity and time to roll this out. It sort of created an even stronger stickiness towards the OpenAI offering, right? And I think if you look at the people in the team, sort of, let's say in the spring of 2023 versus in the spring of 2024, like now I could actually by myself individually execute a lot of the work to have a prototype, a proof of concept, to see if it's able to execute what I wanted to do. Then if you're working at a big company with security, etc., a lot of more complexity that you need to consider when you're rolling out a product, eventually you're going to need some engineers to actually put it in the real system and have it work. But I can test the proof of concept completely by myself and create embeddings and see if the embeddings are working, add actions to it, go and collect documentation of third-party APIs to see if we can actually get the assistant to execute actions towards that API and so on. So coming back to your question, how has it changed? Previously, product managers, or let's say just, I don't believe so much in the knowledge of this like separated competence anymore. Let's say the person accountable for the project, whatever competence they are, they can now go as far as to create a fairly good proof of concept in the playground environment of OpenAI that then, if it's successfully operating, can just be connected by the engineer. So you basically just plug in the thing that was sort of iterated through to full actual working capability. If that made sense, it looks like it made
No,
sense to you guys.
I think that's actually that's a really good point. Like we actually had an example of Multiply earlier today when we're updating the way, like actually just simplifying the way that we allow like our users to generate on brand content, like with consistent quality, and we're moving towards generating those styles with an assistant. So just like within the Multiply platform, you just click and then you get a style and then you can use it in different languages, etc. And what's interesting is now that we use an assistant, is I can actually go in and configure it in OpenAI Playground while it's live. Which I'm going to be careful with, right? And we're going to do it on the staging, etc. But like still, that enables me to just like logically try out like what's the best way to describe a style, to test it. We even have a style quality assurance assistant that kind of compares the output to the examples provided by the customer, so to see if they diff. And what's cool here is even when it's in a live product, like having it set up like that in basically a no-code AI tool, right? That's sort of what it is, like this playground, right? But with the assistant, it becomes even more obvious. Then I can actually, as a product person or like customer-facing person, really like experiment with it. So it really goes down this no-code lane in like one huge step, I find.
Yeah, massive step.
And Rasmus, how do you feel that an organization should be set up in terms of spreading the knowledge about this? Do you see like that there should be 10% people building things and 90% consuming it, or should everybody be builders now?
Great question. So coming back to how my mind usually addresses situations. Let's assume I'm the CEO of a company that has 400 employees. And now I'm going to try to answer your question. I find myself in this day and age where these tools are available, and I have 400 people that have been working at my company for a while, and they have context on what we're doing, and we're obviously competing in an industry where other companies have access to these tools where maybe they're using it or not using it. What is my first point of action here? And that's where I come back to people, process, and product that I mentioned before. Is I think the first point of action that you have to do is you got to activate your entire workforce to use these tools, to build education. Because whatever future our company is going to head towards, if it's a smaller pool of staff, if we're going to expand and take more market share within our segment, hence we will need more labor force. However, we have this relative dilution effect on like you have higher productivity on people, but then maybe I can keep my 400 people. The truth is just that in the environment we're competing, the ones who learn how to use these tools would have a competitive advantage on an individual basis with higher productivity as individual contributors, on a company basis by having a better operational or OPEX, EBITDA, if you have lower costs per errand executed by introducing AI and LLMs in your processes. So higher productivity on people, higher productivity on process. And then eventually you got to move to build products that are empowered by AI. And we can talk about not being a real AI company, so to say. You're not OpenAI or you're not Google. When will you have a relevant future state despite not building an LLM that has an empowered AI product? We can talk about that in a bit. But so to your question, what do? The first thing I would do as CEO is I would really demand that everybody starts using it. I would have a lot of efforts inside the companies where people are allowed to invest in leveraging these tools. I'd go down on department level in the go-to-market departments and be like, how are you going to do automatic prospecting by building out automation chains with make.com and OpenAI assistants? If we need some engineering there, let's take some motivated engineer from the engineering department and move them over. But you got to activate each department because all aspects of our company will be set up for competing with ones that have these capabilities. Then second to that, there is the uncomfortable and real truth that you might need to address on, like, some departments might not need as huge amounts of staffing capabilities. But I don't think that's where you should start. I think like retraining, creating competitive edge with your entire group of people that have context is the most appropriate starting point.
So how do you incentivize people to actually reveal when there can be huge productivity improvements that might even threaten their like role descriptions at the company?
Yeah. It's a good question. There might be several answers to this.
Yes, but is it? I also want to ask you: is it actually a concern in reality?
We've gone through this so many times as our productivity has increased. We're 100 times more productive on producing food just in not that many decades. So I think let's say it like this: for the individual, emotionally speaking, it is a reality. There are people that get threatened and feel that their job is at risk. So that's true, and you need to address that. But on the other hand, if you are in a company that wants to make these initiatives, you might be the one who gets to operate in your competence, in your function, with the empowerment of this technology. I think Scott Galloway, which I assume you know, he says it well, like, AI might not take your job, but someone using AI will.
Yeah.
So you might as well just be the person on the side of taking that. So if I'm the CEO, I want to make all of the people in my company be the ones that are more productive and take the long-term job. Yeah.
And luckily, in a globalized world, the market is almost equal to infinite. So we can just move faster. We don't need less people. We can move faster instead, infinitely faster.
But I think, like, just tying back to what we talked about before, like, I think it's quite like amazingly empowering for people if you get them into, let's say, like, I think company hackathons might be like a big thing in the future. Just sitting down with workflow tools, whether it's make.com or Zapier or Multiply, and then building GPTs and assistants, like how people see like what they can do quickly if they learn it. And then I think just there is something kind of basic in most people that if something can be automated, then it's like most people are not going to want to do it. Like, there's so much stuff we do on a daily basis that we don't want to do. And I really think that, like, we're going to be surprised by the value add that humans continue to have, even with AI. Like, in terms of, let's say I'm, an author, something that's very artistic, right? And now, instead of like writing every sentence in every chapter I can really focus on storyline, finding inconsistencies, like rewriting something that really didn't, pull the threads the right way. You're going to be able to, handle much more complexity in your writing. You're probably going to be creatively empowered to really get those words right by trying 100 different versions with the help of AI while instructing it. So I really think it's just like, right now it feels a little bit to some people like, okay, now I don't need to illustrate these kind of symbols or images anymore because it can do it for me. But actually what happens is I can illustrate much, much better and much, much more. So it's both like speed and quality and doing less of what we don't like. So I just think the inherent experience of anyone who started using AI and found some value in it is just so positive. So I'm not so worried. I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing like a lot of engagement and excitement actually within like at least within the people I talk to in my work.
So something a parallel on, like, what does AI do for like an average person if you play out the progress? People that are financially well off, they progressively buy themselves away from doing stuff that is boring and repetitive. if you're well off, you have an assistant that helps you do your receipts for your work. If you're super well off, you might have assistants in your private life that goes through the shopping, cleans the clothes, cleans the apartment, etc. This is going to give us, when it comes to the digital world, it's going to make assistants available for almost anybody sitting in front of a screen, or whatever interface we have in the future, which is another super interesting discussion. But and essentially, then you can go do what you like, and that's true for if you're in the accounting finance department of a business and you're sitting and reviewing receipts every month. That's not fun. If you're sitting in customer support and categorizing emails, like this is category A, this is category, that's not fun. It's fun to help somebody with a complex customer problem, which merits you to really think and have a dialogue. But doing the sort of categorization, I think it's just like everybody's gonna be able to live a richer life in their work environment, so to say, as we were all super well off financially.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's well put. But like it's interesting also, like if we tie that back, because we talked about a little bit about, I think the people process product one is like a very good frame of how this will work, and then also of course like privately how it will take us up the ladder, so to say, of the service we can expect in our lives, like the average person. But if we double click there on, like, I think building product and companies, how that will fundamentally change. And we sort of talked about that a little bit on like the product side, how we're building software. But let's just like maybe imagine like building a new startup or something, right? In terms of both the kind of competencies you need, the people, how many, and like how quickly you can get to a prototype, but also to like a finished like working product that you can sell to your customers. Because this is something I'm very interested in. Like the sense is, and we can dive into this, is less, right? Less people, less specific competencies, less code written, less time to get to market, right? But like it's what are your thoughts about that, Rasmus? Like, as you, is there any of those points where you like, reflected on?
Yeah. If so, assuming we start a software startup, yes, I do believe you need a smaller team to try proof of concept. I don't think that's rocket science. I've started even drifting in the direction of believing that what you mainly need is back-end engineering capability. Because when it comes to the front-end stuff, so much open source. Actually, a lot of these tools, you can like draw on a paper, upload it, and can produce. You can print screen third-party services and say like create a similar front-end as this image you've seen and so on. So you can get quite far with that, especially when it comes to proof of concept stage, where you might be okay with some glitchiness and some pixels not being in the right place. However, the business logic of the service that you're selling, that you need somebody to help set up. So I think that the backend engineering aspect is vital. I do believe you still need sales to make sure it works, because there is not only sort of signing the papers when you are in the early phase of building a company, but when you're sitting in front of a customer and having a dialogue, you have the ability to pick up the sense of truth around if they want to buy this product, what, if anything, in the product is it that they want and what do they don't want, how do you pivot, etc. So to put it very simply, I think it's been even more obvious that now you can get away with back-end engineering and sales when you start a company. Even though on product, I think that somebody takes the product hat, whether there is a person there or not, the engineer, the salesperson in between. You can get away with the cheating a little bit there or not having somebody super experienced. Hopefully you learn anyway. Sorry for everybody that's a product manager, including myself. But yeah, and you get higher output. If you're migrating a legacy service with a huge complexity and so on, you don't see the productivity increase on engineering in the same way. If you're building a greenfield project, you can actually come a long way with Copilot and ChatGPT support and doing error searching and so on. Like you can really use these tools. So I think it's super exciting to think about starting tech or software startups today. It really is in one way. But whenever it's easier to get speed and momentum, that's true for everybody else. So it's like
Yeah.
being in a race where now suddenly everybody drives a faster car from day one. Uh, some people we're still going to have a lot of crashes, maybe proportionally more crashes because there's going to be more cars in the race. And yeah.
But I think that's like it's I think it's true. Like it's interesting because it changed in two ways. Like the value of like different competence, right? You touched upon, and I think it's if I want to double click on the sales part, I think one of the things that's really like happening now and was already happening with like Web 2.0 and social media is like there's too much content. Like your attention is the limiting factor. Human attention is the limiting factor. So getting heard through that noise is increasingly more valuable. And I think, for example, old school sales is just going to become more valuable because that's not where people are most kind of bombarded. Of course, your email and your social media, etc. But an old-fashioned phone call or knocking on the door, I don't know, going to a networking event, kind of is going to work. And those skills are not going to be replaced by Optimus robot anytime soon. And I also think like the value of creativity, right? Like actually being heard through the noise and adding that, creative touch, that the value of ideas will go up. There was like a famous speaker like a number of years ago who said that just about Web 2.0, and I think that's even more true now. That whether it's in product or in marketing, etc., it's going to be like the value of ideas and clear perspectives and clear understanding of the like markets, etc., and what they want and understanding of people. That's going to like just increase. But I think it's also switched in another way, which is like if you take that whether it's an existing company or a new company, the time to try something valuable and new is so short and like the money needed is so low, then I think it's really going to fundamentally move us to like even more of kind of a lean startup mentality generally and just like trying things, which I think is amazing. Just like from a kind of for everyone, it's going to be, but yeah, it's going to move fast.
It's also interesting to think about the role of venture capital in that new world. Like that, I
Yeah.
think that like everything that needed a pre-seed funding before is going to be very cheap to just experiment and throw out without any funding at all. So VC money is going to go much more towards scaling maybe in the future than it has so far.
Yeah, I think it might be a scenario where you also see this like 6-month decent salary investments. So the seeds fund from where they were in 2021, they're going to be way smaller. But you have a 3-person team, they get to earn, $5,000 per month. It's a small salary per person, but they have something and sort of throw a bit of money on it, see where it lands. I don't know if it's going to be the big VC funds that actually start doing that. I have my intuition is saying no because they don't want to put up with the administration and speaking to all of them and so on. But looking at entrepreneurs, angel investors that have a bit of money on hand, and then suddenly you meet Martin and you feel like, oh, I like you, Martin. Oh, you just need a 6-month runway, and you think you can do that? Sure. It's going to be even cheaper to do that. Actually, I would say the real meaning of seed funding. It's going to be easier. Real seed funding.
Pure seed.
Yeah, pure seed. There was something I wanted to highlight one thing about starting a company, which because it's so easy to get drawn into the productivity gains and to some degree the hype. I, in one way, am still fairly old school. I think the purpose of sales, as we discussed, that's also an old school view. But I think that the most important factor in whether or not you get a startup off the ground is just putting people in a room next to each other and having them focus on it. Even though we have these tools today and we can debate if it's 2 times or 10 times productivity gains on building a proof of concept compared to when I did my first software company in 2010. Being in the same room is I think it's the most important factor. It's and I don't like saying it because I have kids nowadays, and I'm comfortable, and I want to work with great people, and they have kids, and they're somewhere else, and then you got to have dinner with your family. But honestly speaking, put everybody, even if it's 2010 or if it's 2024, give people 1 month in a room together. I think that's the most important factor in comparison to the productivity gains that we have with the tooling that is available today.
Yeah, I
Because
think
of team dynamics, or like what is the reason for you saying that?
Accountability and sense of truth in what you're building. So it's, I mean, compared to a robot, we suck at accountability. We do, because we need to go to the bathroom and we need to eat, and then we have our emotions. And now I have kids. I don't know if both of you have kids. I know host Rasmus
Yes.
has kids. Yeah. And there's so many things poking at our attention, not speaking of how consumerism and stuff works today. Like everything is trying to disturb us, and we get disturbed. And when you sit in the same room, if the three of us start a company, if we sit in the same room and I tell you, I'm going to contact 10 customers before lunch, and you're in the room, it's like that accountability. It's not a choice of decision I have to continuously do after I hung up on the stand-up with the two of you. You're there all the time. And so that the accountability is one. The other is the sense of truth. Because as you're having that accountability, and with that, I'm implicitly saying you're making progress on whatever tasks you commit to, you also get a sense of truth when you're really focused on something, on like, is this working or not? I love playing video games. I used to play a lot more video games, but and I did this stupid thing where I'd sit up all night playing video games. But like the progress I would see in a night by stringing 5 hours of focused time on a specific part of that video game together, that made me excel so much more compared to having 5 hours distributed over a week. Because I was like really banging at the video game challenge. And I think video games are very nice because they draw you in. It's like, a page turner. You just want to stay with it. But when you build a company that way, when you sit in the same room together, there is a sense of truth. Like, is this software going to work? Is it going to solve a problem? If you're sitting and being focused on it. If you just pick it up 1 hour a day, distribute it, you don't get to the same intuitive truth. Does it make sense?
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting in this age, I think, like stringing that together, like I think accelerators, like the main accelerators, are just going to be like huge winners because they've already mastered the model of putting people in a room, putting a very strict process of accountability and focusing on delivering, and writing small checks and then doubling down on the ones who win. And now, they like all of their teams will have a quicker ability to execute, Copilot, etc., writing code, doing things, but also, the type of products they can build. Because we didn't really double click there. Maybe we don't have time today. Let's see. But like, there's also there's completely new kinds of products you can build, right? Where you don't need as much UI potentially.
Yeah.
Because the assistants can, provide, like, guide you through complexity through conversation, of handling your finances or whatever area of, a business or private life that you want to kind of serve. So I think they're going to be big winners. And I think just metaing this up a little bit, like whether it's sales or in the same room, I just think the value of interpersonal relationships and interpersonal skills, like very human skills, is just going to go way up as we automate all the other stuff. So I like it. I'm pretty excited for that, actually.
Me too. But speaking of which, you have such a point with the accelerators, and it just hits me now. Like, to my knowledge, at least, there is no Nordic-based or Sweden-based accelerator in the class of Y Combinator. We're so proud that. Would you say that there is one?
I mean, I not class of Y Combinator, maybe. I mean, but Antler's good. Like, I hear good things about Antler. I haven't seen their returns or anything like that. But I've heard, like, rumor-wise, that they're doing well, and that there are good companies coming out of there. I think they're the premier one. If you want to benchmark them to YC, that's a hard one to kind of to compete against, maybe. But I think Techstars, or was it 500 Startups, failed here, right? I think they tried, but they failed.
We have this culture of incubators in Sweden, where they've sort of competed, since they're governmental financed. They have made competition very hard for accelerators, but they have this 3-year mindset instead of a 6-month mindset, which is like the whole idea. Like, you're 4 people now, you're still going to fit in that room 3 years from now. It's just not communicating an idea of growth at all.
No, and either that room is going to be empty or it's going to be too small, right?
It is, exactly. In this day and age.
Absolutely. But it's true, I think. And also incubators are more jante, the Swedish terminology for just like don't
Exactly. Like an incubator is where you keep the fetus alive when it cannot survive on its own.
Mm.
Like
Wow.
it's a
That's
completely
That's such a bad comparison, actually. I hadn't
yes,
thought about
yes,
that.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
such a bad word to use. It's
yeah,
like, please live,
Oh
please
wow.
live.
yeah.
Never thought about it like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I I want to ask one more thing. We talked so much about and no code tools and prototyping, but do you have sort of a secret sauce on putting AI products into production, deploying into production? Like what's the takeaways there for you?
The answer is different if you're deploying for millions of customers or if you're deploying a startup functionality. Risk appetite should be relative to the asset you're managing. So what I mean with that is if you have 5 customers, you can be more risky. If you have 5 million customers, you should be relatively less risky, right?
Yeah.
If I ask the 5 million customer set up, automated testing in all of it different in all the different ways it's capable, having 4-eye reviews on the pull
Mm.
requests, etc., blah blah blah. And once you get through that stage, put it out. I still believe in putting it out early, putting it out fast, and then putting it out on small percentage volumes and seeing that it works on small percentage volumes in whatever KPI way you are measuring your product. Um, and then it's a long discussion on like how you do that, which I don't know if you want to go down the rabbit hole of how you slice your usage traffic to see if it works, and then eventually scaling up. I think that if you're managing one of those big products, you come to some hard decisions where you see your key performance indicator, if it might be conversion, actually going down when you do a fundamental push for the product, when you move something. So then you need to really have courage and understanding of the long-term vision and if it might be acceptable to take a conversion drop to make this move because you have another KPI that's going to grow over time. So there it's you really need nuance and strategic thinking to make the right decisions. I do believe we in many bigger companies have had a tendency to create too many visionary and strategic owners of sub products, which make us sub optimize. And the long term output is you build Frankenstein interfaces. That is the result of hundreds of different A/B tests that prove to have positive conversion on this one thing, this one thing, this one thing,
Yeah.
this one thing. I think, yeah, you know where I'm going.
Mm.
Release, take risks, but you also need to have the strategic and courage ambitions to make the leaps that the product needs to do. Sometimes it's harder, the numbers won't tell you everything. To answer the other scenario, you have 5 customers, you have a small company. Then you really need to take more risk. You can't have the time spent in building all that automated testing infrastructure unless you get it for free from some AI integrated capability in your deployment process. In that case, great. But if it takes a lot of time, you can't put all those security rails around deploying your product. You got to go because time is of the essence and you got to get proof of concept. So in that scenario, I actually recommend you can take safety measures like deploying at night if you have a software that is mainly used during the day. Or like you say what I mean, like organic
Mm.
safety, but don't block yourself. It's a common problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just like one reflection that I think maybe it's time to round off soon, but I think it's interesting now that like given the 4 people in a room for a month or 3 months with an accelerator or whatever, like and what you said in the end here, like you need to move fast now, in the sense that like everyone else will be moving faster and faster, and you should be able, if you're like, to get shit out like pretty quickly and try it, and then if it fails, etc. And I think that's going to be just like, I think the startup mindset is going to have to and probably will spread into every organization, like
Mm.
because like just the speed will be like really really quick. But it's interesting to hear also about like the big company perspective, of course. And there are apparently like, I know Klarna is kind of like at the forefront of moving fast and shipping, etc. Right? But it's interesting to hear that even within those companies, there are strategies to kind of do that, to move fast, ship things, even when you have like millions of customers. Like that's interesting.
But I mean, it's a long discussion if you can get the full nuance on how you think about
No, of
releasing
course.
it. And there are also counter forces to that, which is like have high quality products, rather release fewer times but put out something that is really functioning. And if you're I think that a common limitation of when you're more junior is that you think about stuff in a two-dimensional way, being like release fast, often, high risk, and fail fast. Mark Zuckerberg's famously said. And then the other one is like release seldomly with full confidence and know that it always works. That is not the craft of a senior skilled person. It knows when you're doing a release which needs the sophistication and detail and cautious awareness that this is working and delivering high quality value. While some things you release, you can isolate it and release it in a way which doesn't really put the main offering at risk. So using the right tools at the right time is the more senior mindset.
Awesome. I think that's a really good point to round off. Host Rasmus, do you have any final words
No,
before
just
we close out?
no. This was fun. I mean, appreciate it, Rasmus, that you wanted to come by. Let's bring you back the next time there's something big and new kind of emerging in the market. Like I think there's going to be really interesting to sort of circle back on how building software will change, like how building products, maybe is a better way, will change, like over the coming 6 months, etc. So yeah, I mean, just yeah, thanks a lot, and happy to have you back sometime soon.
Yes. Thank you so much, both. And thank you, dear listener, for being with us all the way to the end of this episode of Co-Creating with AI. See you next time.